Yo, yo, yo. How's it going? Welcome back. I appreciate you tuning in. This is a Living for a Living podcast. Episode number 1, technically. And just real quick before I start, just to give you an idea, I guess I like explaining myself. I kind of had an idea or like 3-4 topics in mind that I was going to do solo podcasts for. And this one that I'm about to do is absolutely nothing like the 3 or 4 topics I had written down to start, because it just randomly came up this weekend. And I think in the nature of the show that I want to do is talking about what's on my mind currently, the things I've been experiencing. And so we're going to dive right into this topic. And this topic for today's podcast is death. And subsequently with death is you have to talk about life. And, I think, like I said, this podcast is called Living for a Living. That's my mantra, my motto, whatever you want to call it, that I've been trying to live by. And so I think it's almost very fitting for episode number 1, for the birth of all this, is let's talk about the end of everything, death. And what prompted me to think about this was this weekend. Unfortunately, my uncle, my dad's brother, passed away a month or so ago, and this weekend was his memorial. And so my dad came back in town. We went up as a family, and just to be honest, I'm not close with my dad's side of the family at all. I only get to see them once every couple years at max, if that, lately. And so this uncle, I just didn't really know that well. And so going into the whole thing, I didn't think I would be feeling too much emotion revolved around it. It's hard to cry for somebody or feel emotion for somebody you don't know, But I was surprised when that kind of changed once I got there. And so as the memorial service started, I'm just going to jump right into this. As the memorial service started, the speaker, brought up some ideas and things that made me think. And that first thing he talked about was, the fact that all of us here on earth have a limited amount of time. We don't get to choose when we start. We don't get to choose when we end. It's not like clocking out. You get to choose when. No, it's up to something else. And some of us are lucky and get to have a long life. Some of us don't. And the reasons for that, we could argue in a later. I don't have any answers to that, but that could be argued amongst forever, But that idea that our time here is limited was the main thing I got from that. And so, obviously, first I relate that to myself and thought about, there's the clock's always ticking. There's no pause. And I'm very guilty of feeling like when I'm back in the States or back home in Issaquah that it sometimes feels like my life is on pause. And I've said that word for word before, which is not true at all, obviously. And so just the idea of that for myself was a really good thing to think about. And then in turn, it made me think, even though I wasn't close to my uncle, is eventually I'm going to go to one of these funerals or services for someone that is very close to me. And that, not just my time is ticking, everybody's time is ticking. And, my dad's only a year younger than his brother who passed. And so, it sucks to say, but his time is coming eventually as well. And, in the past couple of years, I've had some close friends, fathers passed away at a much younger age than my dad. And so immediately that's kind of what I thought. But, it could be my mom or a best friend or a cousin or a loved, any person that I truly care about, because up until this point of my life, I haven't had to deal with the passing of someone super close to me. All of my grandparents died when I was young, and while it was sad, is I didn't know them well enough for it to truly affect me, and so the speaker was saying that we all have, eventually our time is up, and we don't know when that's going to be. I could live for another 70 years. I could live till I'm 100. Or I could fall down the stairs after I get done recording this podcast and break my neck. We don't know. I'm going to be very careful on the stairs after this. But yeah, we just don't know. And so then, as the service went on, my dad had to end up, he said some stuff about his brother, and I could tell, it was tough for him. And seeing that made me think, eventually, as I said, I'm going to be at one of these services where I'm going to have to be the one up there talking about a loved one and what they meant to me and how they affected me and all of that. And I thought, shit, I'm not ready to do that, man. I'm not ready. And then I realized that, shoot, nobody in this room was ready to do that. Even though my uncle had a list of things going wrong with him currently, but to give it in short, is he was given 18 months to live 3 years ago. And so even though everyone, for the most part in the room, knew this date was looming, it was in the future, that still didn't make anybody ready for it. And that was a powerful idea, was that even no matter what, you're not ready for these type of situations. And just knowing that the clock's always ticking, so you got to make the most of it. And I have a lot of things that I want to accomplish in my life, some big aspirations that at times, I'll admit it, man, I bullshit and don't use time productively and could definitely do more. And anytime I'm back in the States, specifically Issaquah, sometimes I feel like my life is on pause, which really isn't the case, because your time is always ticking. That's just the facts. And so like I said, I needed it. And the next train of thought I had was, eventually one of these services is going to be for me. And it made me think, what kind of legacy, my guy Gary Vee always talks about it, what kind of legacy do I want to leave? What will people say about me when I'm gone? How will people feel, who all will show up? And, these thoughts aren't very common in my mind, to be honest. And I don't think they're common in a lot of people's mind. But I think it's a good thing to rattle around up there every now and then. I really do. And so all of those kind of trains of thought made me realize, let's stop fucking wasting time. Let's get going on this. I've been wanting to do this podcast now for at least a year. And then I finally just said, fuck it, let's do it. And now I'm doing it. But thinking now, shit, I wasted so much time over the last year that I could have easily started this already. But I also, in the same stretch, in the same breath, I believe that it is as it should be and the timing is always right. That's my hippie quote for you for the day right there. And the timing of me doing all this right now is exactly how it needs to be. So yeah, and then today it kind of relates. I think I was listening to this podcast and the guy was saying how they were talking more about business and the process of asking for a favor And ultimately it related to, we all of us only care about ourselves, you know, at least first. Like me and my time is the most important to me. It's not the most important to anybody else besides me. And no one is at home right now thinking about what the hell I'm doing or what I'm feeling. And that sounds like sad or like negative or whatever, but I truly really mean it in a positive way. Because once you realize that, like, basically nobody gives a fuck about you, which kind of sucks to say, but it's true. Once you realize that only you give a fuck about yourself. And so then what are you going to do about it once you realize that? And what do there's no excuse after that. And I have occasionally throughout the last year or two with some of my video stuff and some other things that I've been doing is, people that are super close to me that have some big dreams and aspirations as well that I love, I sometimes find myself almost caring more about their stuff and wanting to help them succeed than caring about my own stuff. And as I say this, I realize that it could almost be like a defense mechanism that I've created to put more thought and effort into their stuff as a way of not fully acting on my stuff, out of fear of failure or out of fear of whatever, just fear. And then by me sometimes putting all this effort into other people's stuff and worrying about their stuff maybe more than I worry about my own, I get frustrated then when they don't receive it or they don't receive it in the way that I want them to receive it. Or, they don't take my idea or suggestion or whatever. And so just the combination of all these things really got me into like man, fucking get back to doing you. Worry about you. Let's worry about, my vlog, this podcast, my football stuff, and everything else is secondary. Because at the end of the day, the clock is ticking and we don't know when that last second's going to run out. And then I realized too that, damn, I'm probably saying I realized so much in this podcast. Oh, well, but, it makes me think, that's just a synonym for it, that depending on what metric you're using, I've done a lot compared to some people my age. But then also on the same breath, depending on what metric you're using, I haven't done shit. And just that idea made me a little bit more hungry and wanted and made me want to get out and do more or use my time much more wisely. And so I think that's a very positive thing. Our society doesn't like talking about death. And I don't think it's a great thing to talk about all the time. But to me, man, it puts some shit in perspective because it's the ultimate, death is the ultimate equalizer. There's no if, ands, or buts about it. That is the ultimate. And so when we can talk about that a little bit more and get it in our minds too, that, hey, we're going to die. Like, that's inevitable. Like, what do we want to be remembered for? What do we want to accomplish? When we're sitting there in our last breaths, whenever they may be, are you going to be sitting there thinking like, I did this shit? I used every moment I coulda. I might not have accomplished a specific thing that I wanted to do, but motherfucker, I tried. You know? Or you're going to be laying there thinking like, dang, I wish I would have done that. Or, if only I could have done this. And that regret, man, is a scary thing. That's I was having a conversation with my buddy yesterday, and we were talking about sports careers in general, and it wasn't going in his exact way his whole career, even though he was balling out at a top level. And he looked and he said, bro, I prepared exactly how I felt I should. I did everything in my power. I produced when I got the chance. And if it didn't happen, it didn't happen. But I don't regret. I couldn't, in my mind, there's not more I could have done. And so for me, I'm good. I can take it not being a success story in the sense of the word. And that struck me, because there's other people who are in that success category that didn't do everything that they could have done. Whether it be sports, whether it be business, whether it be family, whether anything. And so, yeah, that's just what's been on my mind the last couple days. The idea that while death is completely imminent for all of us, the life that we're living prior to that is what separates people. And ultimately, talking about death and talking about some of these uncomfortable things can help and can give us more strength and give us more motivation and determination. I mean, I witnessed it firsthand this weekend. And so that's what I just wanted to pass along today. Was just kind of the idea that, you're going to die. It's kind of creepy. I'm laughing after I say that, right? But I mean that in the best way possible, is at some point you got to clock out, and you don't get to choose when. And when that time does come, how are you going to feel about it? You're going to feel like I did all I could? Professionally, personally? Or are you going to think, oh, gosh, I wish I could have done a little bit more? And I realized that up until this point in my life, like I said, I've done a lot, depending on what lens you're choosing to look at it from. And in the same breath, man, I haven't done shit. And there's so much more that I want to do. And sometimes, like I said, sometimes I bullshit and waste a lot of time. Either just being wasteful, or by I'm a thinker, planner kind of person where I'll plot it out and think about it and plot it out and think about it and write it down and revise it and type it up and write it down again. And it gets to the point where I'm really good at doing that, and then I don't even fucking do the thing that I'm writing down. You know what I mean? And so I want to attempt to change that, where just fucking go do it. So yeah, sorry to, no, I'm not sorry. I think these dark kind of topics are good for us. They're good to think about. They're good to talk about from time to time. Obviously, I don't want death to be my primary thought all day, every day, but a little reminder here and there can go a long way. So yeah, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to get across for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope wasn't too much for you, but I think this is a good idea of kind of what you can expect moving forward. Obviously, they're not going to be as dreary as this all the time, but at least I hope you thought a little bit from this talk. All right. Well, as always, thank you for giving me your time and your ears, your attention. It really does mean a lot to me. And we will see you next time on Living for a Living. Have a great day and much love.